which is going to have a class name of h-4, w-4, and margin right -2. And let's also write back to course setup like this. There we go. So we have a nice little button that when we click on it, goes back to the course where we came from, right? So I can click on this one and I can go back now. Perfect. So we just have that little action here. That is great. And now that we have that, what we have to do is we have to create the title, right? So let's go ahead below this link and let's create a div with the class name of flex items dash center justify. Whoops. So flex items dash center justify dash between and w dash full like that. Let's create another div with the class name of flex dash call and gap. Whoops. Flex dash call gap dash y dash 2 like that. And now let's go ahead and let's give it an h1 element of chapter creation like that, and the class name of text-2xl and the font-medium like that. All right, and below that we're gonna have a span which is gonna say complete all fields and then completion text like that. And let's give this a class name of text-small and text-slate-700 like this. There we go. So now you can see that we have a very similar screen to what we do here in the course setup, which is exactly what we want. We want our user experience to be familiar throughout the creation of the course. All right, and now that we have that, what I want to do is I want to create a similar grid like we have right here, and we're going to create these sections, and we're going to create the chapter title because it's the easier one to create. So let's go right here to the bottom, almost at the last div like that, and let's create a new div and let's give it a class name of grid. So class name grid calls-1 md grid calls-2, gap is going to be 6 and margin top is going to be 16 like that. All right, and now inside we're gonna go ahead and create a new div with class name space-y-4. Let's go ahead and write a new div inside, and then a div which is gonna hold our icon badge. So class name flex items dash center and gap dash x dash 2. And inside, let's go ahead and write icon badge from @/components icon dash badge. Icon is gonna be layout dashboard like that. So we're gonna have layout dashboard. Make sure you import that from Lucid React. I'm just gonna move it up here. All right, and below that we're gonna have an h2 element which is gonna say customize your chapter like this with the class name of text-xl like this. Great. And now outside of this, I'm gonna write a to-do chapter title form. So let's just quickly see what we have. There we go. So we have this section right here, and now we have to create a form similar to title form, but this time for chapter, right? So let's go ahead and do that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy from the components inside of course ID. I'm gonna copy this title form, and I'm gonna create a new folder inside of the chapter ID folder called _components as well, because these ones are only gonna be used for chapter ID. And I'm gonna paste the title form here, and I'm gonna rename it to chapter-title form like this. And now let's also rename this as well. So it's no longer gonna be title form. Instead, it's gonna be chapter title form for these 3 instances like that. All right, so we have that ready. We can actually remove the message. We can just write like this, simpler. All right, and besides having course ID, we're also gonna have chapter ID. So chapter ID is a string and it's required in the chapter title form right here. So you can also extract the chapter ID inside. All right, so we're going to use that obviously inside of the onSubmit function, which we're going to modify in a second. So let's change this from course title to chapter title like that. everything else can actually stay the same. All right, so we have this, except this is editing. Well, in fact, I think it can stay the same. We're gonna see in a second. And let's change this from advanced web development placeholder to introduction to the course, like that. All right, and let's go ahead inside of our page where I added the comment chapter title form. So just below this div, which is wrapping the icon badge, and the H2 which says customize your chapter, this is all inside of the chapter ID folder page.tsx. So in here, we're gonna add our newly created chapter title form, like that, which is expecting the initial data to be a chapter, which I forgot to actually pass. And let's go ahead and give it a course ID, which is params.course ID, and chapter ID, which is params.chapter ID, like that. All right. And let's just see for the initial data. We write it like this. That's why it's working. All right. So there we go. As you can see, now I have my chapter title and it says test right here because that is the name of my chapter. So if I go outside and pick this one, it should say 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Perfect. So let's see if this is working. When I click, there we go. And one thing that we have to change now is we have to change where the submit function is going. So let's go inside of the chapter title form right here. And let's modify this Axios badge to go to /API/courses a course ID, but then it's going to go to /chapters/individual chapter ID, like that. So make sure you have this, and this is going to say chapter updated, like that. Perfect. So we did that, and now if you try, obviously we are going to get an error because this API route doesn't exist. So let's go ahead and create it. So let's go inside of the API folder. Let's go inside of the courses, course ID, chapters, and inside create a new folder in square brackets, chapter ID, like that, and create a new file, route.ts. All right. Now let's export a synchronous function batch, which is going to have a request, which is a type of request, and we're going to have params, which is an object, and which holds the course ID, which is a string, and a chapter ID, which is a string. All right, let's open the try and catch block. Whoops, I got ahead of myself. All right, so let's open the try and catch block with the error, and let's console log courses chapter ID. So anything for you to easily recognize this in the terminal. And then for the actual client, return new next response from next/server internal error with a status of 500, like that. Perfect. Let's go ahead and let's get our user ID from the out function using clerk next.js. Let's go ahead and let's get all the values using await request.json. If there is no user ID, in that case, return new next response unauthorized with a status of 401, like that. Let's go ahead and let's import the database from s/lib database, like that. Let's go ahead and let's find own course to be await db.course.find unique, where ID is params.course ID and user ID is matching. And we can copy this clause for if there is no user ID and just check it for if there is no own course is the same response unauthorized. Great, and then we can just do const chapter to be await db.chapter.update, like this, where ID is params.chapter ID, like that. Course ID is params.course ID, like that. Perfect. And let's just go ahead and write in the data where we're gonna spread the values, like that. And then let's return new next response. We're going to write next response.json chapter, like that. All right, and one more thing I want to do is I want to add a little to-do comment, handle video upload, right? So when we get a video URL, we're gonna handle that separately here. And one more thing that I wanna do is I wanna change this so it's not just gonna say values like this. Instead, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna extract is published, and then I'm gonna spread the values separately. So the reason I'm doing this is so that users cannot accidentally set is published true and then we immediately pass that in the values and the chapter is published, right? So chapter publishing will be controlled by a separate API route, which is going to check whether we have all the necessary fields and requirements to publish a chapter. So that's why I'm doing this. Is published is separated from the values. All right, and I think this should already work. So if I go ahead and try inside of my chapter title, so I'm gonna say this is edited chapter, and if I click save, let's see, there we go. This is edited chapter. If I go back, this is edited chapter. Perfect, so it's working, great. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a nice little rich text editor using React Quill, so we can upgrade our description for this chapter, which is going to be written in HTML, so it's nicely presentable inside of the individual course page. Great job. So now let's go ahead and let's create the chapter description box right here. So in order to do that, I first want to install a package called React Quill. So let's go ahead inside of our terminal right here. I'm just going to exit this terminal. I'm going to shut down my app and I'm going to write npm install react-quill like this. Let's wait a second for this to install and then we can run npm run dev again. Great. Now let's go inside of our components folders, our global components, and inside create a new file called editor.tsx like this. Let's mark this as use client. Let's import dynamic from next/dynamic like that. Let's import react-quill/this/quill.snow.css like that. Let's create an interface editor props, which is going to have an onChange option. We're going to have a value and we're going to return a void, and we're going to have the current value like that. Now let's write export const editor like that. Let's go inside of the props. Let's assign them to editor props like that. And inside, let's extract onChange and value like that. Great. Now let's write const react quill to be use memo like this. So make sure you import use memo from React. And what we're going to do is we're going to return dynamic, which we imported right here. And then we're going to go ahead and execute dynamic. And inside, we're going to return an import function for react-quill like this. And let's go ahead and let's add an object SSR pulse like that. And let's add the dependency array. So this is the entire function right here. So what we did is we imported React Quill without server-side rendering. So as I said, use client is not enough to disable server-side rendering. So yes, this is a client component, but it is still rendered on the server once. Sorry, it runs on the server once and then it runs again on the client side. And that won't work with React Quill. You're gonna get hydration errors. So we can import it like this to avoid that. All right, and now that we have this, we have to do a very simple return function with a div and a class name of bg-white. And let's go ahead and let's add a theme, which is snow. My apologies, let's write React Quill, which we just imported dynamically. So let's give it a theme of snow. Let's give it a value of value and onChange on change like that. And that's it. That's our rich text editor. So very simple using React Quill. What I want to create now is an equivalent component called preview. So let's go ahead and let's copy this entire thing and let's create a new component called preview.tsx like this. Let's paste the editor here and let's change this from editor props to preview props. So I'm going to change these 3 instances to preview props, and component name is preview, and this is preview props, right? But we're not going to have an on change here, so you can remove it from here as well. And you can rename this from quill.snow.css to quill.bubble.css, like that. And let's go ahead and let's remove this div like that. And instead, let's give this a theme of bubble. Let's remove this on change, and let's add a property read only like this with capital O. All right, so now we have those 2 components. And now what we have to do is we have to go inside of our, where are we? So the chapter ID, where we have the chapter title form. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna create, we're gonna copy the description form from the course ID components and paste it inside of chapter ID components. So let's rename this to chapter-description-form, like that. Now let's rename that component. So it's not gonna be description form, it's gonna be chapter description form, like that. All right, and now let's go ahead and extend the props to also accept a chapter ID, which is a string, like that. Let's go ahead and let's just simplify this by just having it like that. Let's extract the chapter ID in the props, which we just added. All right, and this can stay the same. And let's rename this toast.success to chapter updated. And let's modify this Axios patch to go to /API/courses course ID /chapters/chapter ID. So the same way we did with the title creation. So this is what it looks like in one line. All right, let's save that. So this is now going to be chapter description, like that. And instead of having a text area here, we're actually going to use the editor component from add/components editor. So we can remove these 2, so no need for them. We can just spread the field. So make sure you have the editor, and you can remove the text area. We are not going to need it. All right, and now that we have that, let's go ahead and let's go inside of the page.tsx, where we are rendering the chapter title form, and let's render chapter description form, like that. So make sure you have chapter description form imported. So I'm just going to separate this relative imports here. All right, let's go ahead and let's pass in the initial data, which is a chapter. Let's go ahead and let's add course ID to be params.course ID, and chapter ID to be params.chapter ID, like that. So it seems like we have some type errors inside. So let's go ahead inside the chapter description form. It's right here. And since we're including mux, I think, oh, okay, so we have the course here, but what it should be is chapter from Prisma client. So go inside of a chapter description form and make sure that you assign initial data to be the chapter type from Prisma client and not the course type. Since we copied this from the course component, that's why we had the type error. All right, so make sure you save this file where you have the chapter description form. Make sure you have your app running. I'm gonna refresh my localhost here. And let's see how that's gonna look like. So below this chapter title, I should have the chapter description. And if I click here, there we go. Look at this. We have a nice little rich text editor. We can do notations, right? We can do lines. We can do a bunch of stuff here. Let's see, we can add it like this. We can even add a link to something else. Great. And we can save this and let's take a look at what happens now. So as you can see here, I am rendering HTML. Well, we don't want that, don't we? So we're going to use that preview component here instead. So let's go ahead and let's find where we render the chapter description. So let's go inside of chapter-description-form. All right, so I'm just going to collapse this. And let's find where we do that. So it's right here where we do this initial data dot description stuff. So first thing I want to do is I want to change this from a paragraph to a div. So I'm going to change this to a div and the ending HTML tag as well. All right, so we did that. And then let's just go ahead and let's change this. So if there is no initial data description like that, in that case, we're going to write no description like this. And below here, we're going to write if there is initial data dot description. In that case, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go and render the preview component from /components preview like this. So make sure you have the preview component imported. And all we're going to do is pass in the value to be initial data dot description like that. And let's see, and there we go. We have a nice little rich text editor. One thing that I want to show you how to do. So it might be that this text is a bit too small for you in comparison to every other text which we have, right? That's something I noticed while I was developing this. It just seems like this text is too small, especially when it's shown in a big course preview, right? So let me show you how you can change that. So you can change that by going inside of your app folder, inside of your globals.css. And just above the upload thing import, let's add a class name .ql-container font-size, and you can hard code it to 16 pixels and add an exclamation important sign. And there we go. You can see how the text now is a bit bigger, which I think looks even better. Great, so I'm gonna do that, and there we go. We have a nice rich text editor right here. We have a working URLs here. We have underlines, a bunch of useful stuff. Great job. So before we go on to creating and uploading a video, what we are going to do is we're going to create a section called Access Settings. So in here, the creator of the course will be able to check whether this chapter is going to be free for preview or not. So let's go ahead and let's go back inside of our page where we rendered the chapter ID. So that's in the dashboard, routes, teacher, courses, course ID, chapters, chapter ID, page.tsx right here. So let's find where we have the chapter description form. That's the last thing we added here. And let's just go ahead and go outside of this div and open a new div. And inside, we're going to create a little flexbox compartment. So flex items-center and gap-x-2. And let's add the icon badge, which we already have. Let's give it an icon of eye from Lucid React. So just make sure you have that for imported. And below that, an H2 element where we're going to say access settings like that. And as you can see, we have our icon right here. And let's just give this H3 element a class name of text-xl like this. Great. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and copy the description form. So let's copy the description form from here. Let's paste it and let's rename it to chapter-access form like that. Let's go inside of chapter access form and let's just quickly rename this. So it's going to be chapter access form like that. Great. And now let's go inside of page.tsx outside of this flexbox div and let's just render the chapter access form like this. Let's go ahead and let's pass in the chapter, the initial data, which is going to be chapter. Let's pass in the course ID, which is params.course ID, and chapter ID, which is params.chapter ID, like that. There we go. And now we have duplicate description here. So let's go inside of that chapter access form. And what we're going to do is we're going to start modifying our form schema right here. So we are no longer modifying the description in here. Instead, we're only going to work with that field called is free. So if you take a look in our schema in the model chapter, we have a form for title, we have a form for description, and we can already change the position with drag and drop. What we're going to do now is the is free field right here. And then we're going to do the video URL and mux data. So let's go ahead and change this. So make sure you're in chapter access form, right? So change the description to is free, and that is going to be a boolean, so z.boolean like that, with a default value of false like this. And let's just not misspell Boolean. All right, let's go inside of the form right here, and the default values are going to be a bit different. So I'm going to write is free is going to be initial data that is free, but we're going to turn that into a definite Boolean. So just in case it's undefined or something, you can just add double exclamation points and that turns it into a Boolean. Or you can use this, you can mark it as a Boolean like that, and that's either going to be true or false then, right? But I like this way of doing it. All right, so now that we have that, what I want to do is just quickly fix our onSubmit function. So it is still a patch, but it's going to go to /API coursers. Oh, we already have it. I forgot that we copied that from the chapter description form. So nothing to do inside of the onSubmit. Great. But one thing that we have to do is we have to add a checkbox component from ShadCN. So let's go inside of our terminals here. And I'm going to write npx ShadCN-UI at latest add checkbox like this. So just confirm this installation. And after that is done, we're going to run the project again. And now we have to add that checkbox inside of our form. So let's go ahead and let's import the checkbox. So import checkbox from add/components UI checkbox like this. All right. And now let's go ahead and let's find our form element right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go inside of this form field. We're going to change the description to be is free like this. And then inside of this render, let's remove everything like this. And let's start all over again with form item. Let's give the form item a class name of flex-row items-start space-x-3 space-y-0 rounded-md and border with a padding 4 like that. Then inside, let's add a form control. Then let's add a checkbox component, which we just imported, which is going to be a self-closing tag. Let's give it a checked value of field.value, and let's give it onChecked change to be field.onChange like that. All right, so we have that now. Let's go outside of form control and let's create a div, and let's give it a class name of space-y-1 and leading-none. And let's go ahead and render the form description. So we have to import that from add-component/UI form. So make sure you have this imported right here. All right. And let's just write check this box if you want to make this chapter free for preview like that. All right. So let's take a look at how that looks. So right now we're still rendering the description here. So yes, I forgot to change that, but let's just see if when I click on edit description here, there we go. It turns into a checkbox. So that's what we want. And now let's edit this. So it shows not chapter description, but access settings and stuff like that. So we fixed the form. So let's now find this where we are not editing and see what we have to change here. So I'm going to go ahead and go even up and find the chapter description title where I have, and I'm going to change this to chapter access settings like that. And let's change this to edit access like this. And maybe perhaps we can just write chapter access like that. All right. So, I mean, this is just copy, you can adjust it to what makes more sense to you. And now let's go inside of this is editing right here, and let's just modify it so it matches what we need. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to modify this from looking for description. Instead, it's going to look for is free like that. And then let's go ahead and let's write initial data dot is free. In that case, we're going to render this chapter is free for preview like that. Otherwise, we're just simply going to render this chapter is not free like that. And we can then turn this div into a paragraph, right? So let's take a look at now. And there we go. So access settings, it says chapter access, and this chapter is not free. And if I edit this, if I mark this as free, and if I click save, Let's see if that's gonna work now. There we go. Now it says this chapter is free for preview, and if I refresh, there we go, it's right here. Great, so we finished the access settings, and what we have to do now is we have to add the section to upload the video. So let's go ahead and let's just prepare that section. So we have to go back inside of our page where we render the chapter access form right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go outside of this div where we hold this icon badge, outside of this entire div which holds all the other elements, and then create a new div, right? And inside we're going to go ahead and add a flex box. So flex items dash center and gap dash x dash 2. And we're going to go ahead and render an icon badge with an icon of video from Lucid React. So make sure you import the video from Lucid React like that. And let's go ahead and let's add an h2 element, which is going to say add a video like that. And a class name of text-xl like this. And if I expand now, there we go, you can say that it says add a video now. So what we're going to do next is we're going to add a box, which is going to work similarly to our image form in the course, but we're also going to have to create a Mux account, and we're going to have to add some environment keys. Great job so far. So now let's go ahead and let's create this video form right here. So I'm going to go ahead inside of my app folder and I'm going to find the image form. So we have that inside of the teacher courses course ID underscore components, and in here we have an image form. So I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it inside of chapter ID components right here, and I'm going to rename it to chapter dash video dash form like that. All right, and now let's rename this props, this component name and the props reference here to chapter video like that. All right, now let's change the initial data to be a chapter from Prisma client, and let's extend it to also add Mux data here, because we're gonna be rendering the uploaded video inside of this form as well once we have it. So Mux data is gonna be Mux data like that. All right, and we're also gonna have a chapter ID, which is also going to be a string like that. And Mux data can be optional, so just let's also give it a question mark and a null option right like this. Great. Now instead of having actually we don't need the form schema, but because we're not going to use a form, but let's use video URL like this, and we're not going to need any message here like this. All right. Let's also extract the chapter ID in this props right here. Perfect. And in here, we're going to modify this to not go to this API, but to go to /chapters/chapter ID like this. So this is what it will look like in one line. And it's going to say chapter updated like this. All right, and in here we're not going to check for the image URL. Instead, we're going to check for the video URL like that, and in here for a video URL as well. And in here we're going to say add a video, and in here edit video like that. So in here we're going to add video URL as well, and instead of image icon we're going to use the video icon from Lucid React. So make sure you have video imported, and you can remove the image icon, and you can remove the course import from the Prisma client. All right, so we have that. And now let's go ahead and instead of rendering an image here, we're just going to say video uploaded, right? So we're going to replace this later with an actual video player inside. And let's change this to be video URL like that. And inside of here, I'm just going to modify it so that we don't write this aspect ratio. Instead, what we're going to write is upload this chapter's video like that. And now we have an error to be escape the backtick with a Unicode like this. There we go, apples. Perfect. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and let's go outside of here and let's write if there is initial data. Oops, if there is initial data dot video URL, and if we're not editing, like that. Let's go ahead and let's open a div in which we are going to write videos can take a few minutes to process. Like that. Refresh the page if video does not appear. Like that. And let's give it a class name of text-extra small, text-muted-foreground, and empty-2. And I just misspelled this, so foreground, like that. And now we are ready to use this inside of the page TSX right here. So outside of this div which renders the icon badge, let's go ahead and render chapter video form. It looks like I named this chapter video, so I just want to quickly go inside and change this. So not chapter video, but chapter video form. So chapter video form, like this. And now I can use chapter video form like that. Let's give it a course ID of params.course_id. Let's give it a chapter ID of params.chapter ID and initial data of chapter, like that. So just make sure you have chapter video form imported right here. All right. And inside, one more thing that we have to change is this file upload. So the endpoint is not going to be course image. Instead, it's going to be chapter video, like that. Perfect. So now you can see that in here, you can see, oh, it still says course image. Let's quickly change that. So let me just find, where do we write course image? Right here. Let's change that to chapter video, like this. There we go. So as you can see now, when I click, there we go. It only accepts a video. As you can see, only MP4 is allowed. I cannot select any images here. Perfect. So we can try and upload. So just find a very small video, right? This is just for a demo. I'm using a video of 4 megabytes, right? So something very, very small, so it uploads quickly. And let's just see how it looks once we upload this. So right now we're not actually processing this video or anything. And there we go. So it says video uploaded, and we have a nice message that videos can take a few minutes to process. So we're going to replace this now by actually processing this video and creating a proper mux, mux asset, right? So what we have to do is we have to prepare a couple of environment variables, right? So we're gonna have to go inside of our dot environment right here, and let's go ahead and let's add mux underscore token underscore ID and mux underscore token underscore secret, like this. So let's add this to right here, and I want you to go ahead and visit mux.com website and just go ahead and find the sign in button. So I'm gonna go ahead and log in using Google and just fill out this form. So I'm gonna name this tutorial, like that, and let's click create an account here. And just go ahead and fill out this form if you want to. And there we go. So you can use Mux for testing without adding any credit card, right? But if you want to get out of test mode and have no limits, then you have to add a credit card. And then you have a free tier where you can learn more about that by reading the documentation of Mux, right? But for the tutorial, you don't need to add a credit card. You can get Mux up and running. So what I want you to do is I want you to go inside of settings right here and click on access tokens, like that. And in here, let's click generate a new token and select Mux video. So let me zoom in so you can see. So select Mux video and make sure that write is selected. So read is pre-selected, but make sure that write is selected as well. Make sure all of this is in production and click generate token. So don't close this. Let's just copy this immediately and let's paste it inside. So this is the Mux token ID, and let's go ahead and copy the secret key as well. And let's paste that right here. There we go. So now we have both of them, and now you can click continue and you can close this. Great. And now you can go ahead and click on these assets right here. And right now there are no assets here. So we're going to go ahead and create those now. Great. So you don't have to close the Mux tab already because I want to show you how that's going to look once we actually process the video. So now what we have to do is we have to install some packages. So let's go inside of terminal. I'm going to shut down my app and I'm going to write npm install add mux/mux-node like that. After that has installed, we're going to have to install a package called npm i mux/mux-player-react like this. And once you have two of those libraries, you can go ahead and run your project again. So let's just wait for this to install. There we go, npm run dev again. And now what I want to do is I want to go back inside of the route where we update our chapters. So go inside of API, courses, course ID, chapters, chapter ID, route.ts right here. So as you can see, right now we separate these values in here, and that's great. So we save the video URL inside of the chapter, but I wrote a to-do here that we have to handle video upload. So let's go ahead and let's do that. So I'm going to go and import mux from @mux/mux-node like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and write const, and I'm going to destructure video to be new mux, and I'm going to pass in process.environment.mux_token_id as the first argument, and process.environment.mux_token_secret as the second one. And you can just put exclamation points at the end to get rid of these errors. And when you write this, always make sure that they match what's written in your environment file. So mux token ID, make sure you have that. All right. And mux token secret, make sure you have that. Great. So now that we have that, let's go down to where we actually have to check for our video upload. So I'm going to remove this comment right here, and I'm going to write if there are in values that we have a video URL. In that case, let's begin the video creating process using mux. So first thing I want to do is I want to find existing mux data, right? So if a user changes the video, we want to delete the asset from mux if it already exists and then create a new one, right? So we don't want to fill up our storage with mux. So let's write const existing mux data to be await db.muxdata.find first where chapter ID is equal to params.chapter ID, like that. And then we're going to go ahead and write if we have existing mux data. In that case, let's await video.assets.delete, so just del existing mux data.asset ID, like that. And then let's do await db.muxdata.delete where ID is equal to existing muxdata.id, like that. So this is our cleanup function if user is just changing a video. And now we're gonna write the code if user never uploaded any video whatsoever. So let's write const asset to be await video.asset.create, like that. Input is going to be values.video URL. Playback policy is going to be public and test is going to be false. All right. And now let's go ahead and let's write await db.muxdata.create like this. And let's give it data of chapter ID to params.chapter ID, asset ID to asset.id, playback ID to asset.playback_IDs, question mark, pick the first one in the array and .id of that one. So there we go. We just created our very own function to create an asset. So let's see how that looks like now. So in here in my assets, currently I have nothing, right? But if I go ahead and edit my video, and if I select a new video and I'm gonna upload it now, what should happen is that when this video gets uploaded and we have a video URL in the patch request, a mux video should get created. So let's see, there we go. Seems like no errors on this side, and there we go. You can see that I have one asset And you can see that it only lasts 10 seconds. That's because it is a test asset, right? So if you're wondering how to get rid of this thing which says Mux for video API purposes only, well, you have to add a credit card for that, right? But if you just wanna try it out without credit card or anything, then you can just play around with this as a proof of concept, right? Or for your portfolio. But if you actually want to use this for a client, well, you're going to have to upgrade to actually use Mux. But even then you have a free tier. Great, so we have that working now, which means that we are ready to actually display that little video instead of this text video uploaded. So let's go ahead and, oh, looks like I have not saved my environment file, but all right. And let's go now back inside of our app folder, dashboard, routes, teacher, courses, course ID, chapters, chapter ID, components, and find the chapter video form like that. So what I want to do is I want to import a file. So import Mux player from @mux/mux player react, like this. Great. And now what we have to do is we have to actually render this. So let's find where we render our video icon. It's right here. All right. And now in here, let's go ahead and let's write Mux player, which is going to be a self-closing tag. Let's go ahead and let's give it a playback ID, which is going to be initial data $.mux data $.playback ID, or just an empty string like that, and metadata like that. Actually, we don't need metadata, so I think we can just use this. Let's see if that is gonna work. So if I refresh here, there we go. You can see that we have our video player right here. Perfect. So we are now finally ready to publish this chapter because we have all the fields. And when this chapter is published, we can finally publish our course. Great. So let me just show you how this looks one more time from zero. So I'm going to go back to course setup here, and I'm going to create a new chapter called test like this. And I'm going to go ahead and edit it, and I'm going to add a new video. So let's see how that looks like when I add an asset without there being anything before. So it's uploading, and once it's processed in here, we're gonna have that Mux video. And what will happen is that for a second, it's going to say that the video is still processing, right? There we go. So it says that video is not currently available. So just like on YouTube, if you ever uploaded a video, it takes some time to process that video, right? But you can see, since it's a small video, the moment you refresh, I can see my video right here. Then again, if you want to get rid of this badge right here, you have to upgrade Mux. Great, but for tutorial, you can keep it. It doesn't really matter. All right, great job. So what we're gonna do now is create some little actions here to actually publish this chapter. What we have to do now is we have to create our actions, which we are going to use to publish both the course itself, but also an individual chapter. But before we do that, I want to create a little banner on top here, which is going to tell the user whether this chapter is published or not. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go inside of my components folder. So my global components, and I'm going to create a new file called banner.tsx, like that. And let's go ahead and let's write export const banner like this and return a div saying banner. So we're going to do that for now. And now let's go to the top and let's add some imports. So let's import alert triangle from Lucid React and check circle. Check circle icon like that. And now let's go ahead and let's import CVA and variant and type variant props from class variance authority like that. And let's also import CN from libutils. Now let's write const banner variants, which is going to be CVA. Let's give it the default classes of border, text-center, P-4, text-small, flex, items-center, and W-full, like this. And now let's go ahead and let's open an object. Let's define our variants. So our variants is going to be a variant like that. And they're going to be warning, which can be bg-yellow-200/80, border-yellow-30, and text-primary, like that. And we're going to have a success variant, which is going to be bg-emerald-700, border-emerald-800, and text-secondary, like that. And outside of variants, let's write default variants, and that's going to be a variant called warning. So that's going to be the default one. All right. And now that we have that, let's create an interface. So interface banner props extends variant props type of banner variants, like that, and a label of string. Great. And now inside of here, let's go ahead and let's map those banner props, and let's extract the label and the variant, like that. Perfect. So what I want to do now is I want to create an icon map. So I'm going to do that outside of the component. So const icon map warning is going to be alert triangle, which we imported, and success is going to be check circle icon, like that. Great. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and let's create a constant for a specific icon we want. So const icon with a capital I is going to be icon map, and we're going to pick from a variant. If we don't have a variant, we're going to use warning, like that. Great. And now let's go ahead and let's write class name for this div, which is going to be cn. Inside of, we're going to write banner variants, and then we're going to pass in the variant which user selected, like that. And inside, let's render the icon, which is going to have a class name of h-4, w-4, and margin right 2, and a label like this. Great. So now we have our banner component, and now I want to add it to the page.tsx, which renders the chapter. So let's go inside of the teacher, courses, course ID, chapters, chapter ID, page.tsx right here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to wrap this entire thing inside of a fragment like this. So let's go ahead and wrap this thing in a fragment like that. Let's indent it, and now I'm just gonna write if chapter is not published, so exclamation point, right? In that case, we're gonna render the banner from @/components banner. So just make sure you imported the banner. I'm just gonna move it with this components right here. Great, so we have the banner now. Let's give it a variant of warning. And let's give it a label of this chapter is unpublished. It will not be visible in the course, like this. There we go. So you can see how this looks now. So it gives us a warning that this chapter right here is not published. Great. So now we're ready to create our actions. Perfect. Before we do that, after completion text, let's go ahead and let's add another constant. Const is complete, and that's going to be required fields.every boolean, like that. So we're going to check that every item inside of this array is true, right? So if we don't have a title, description, or video URL, this is not going to be true. Perfect. So now that we have that, let's go ahead now and let's find this text which says complete all fields, and find the end of this div which encapsulates that span, and inside we're going to write chapter actions, like that. So it's a component that we don't have yet, but we are going to create it. So you can feel free to save this and you're going to get an error, but let's already prepare some stuff. So disabled if it's not complete, like that. Course ID is going to be params.course ID. Chapter ID is going to be params.chapter ID. And is published is going to be chapter.isPublished, like that. Great. So now let's go ahead and let's go inside of the underscore components and let's create a new file called chapter-actions.tsx. Let's mark this as use client. And let's export const chapter actions like that, and return a div. So just write something inside. Let's go back inside of page and let's just import this from /_chapter actions. Great. And now let's create an interface that's going to match those props. So interface chapter actions props is going to have disabled, which is a boolean. It's going to have course ID, which is a string, chapter ID, which is also a string, and is published, which is a boolean, like that. Great. Now let's add those props here. So chapter action props, like that, and let's extract all of them. So disabled, course ID, chapter ID, and is published, like that. Great. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and let's create a, so we have a div here. Let's go ahead and let's give it a class name of flex items dash center and gap dash x dash 2. Let's add a button from components UI button. So make sure you import that. All right. And inside, let's go ahead and let's write is published question mark unpublish. Otherwise, the action is going to be publish, like this. And let's go ahead and give this on click to just be an empty arrow function. Disabled prop is going to be disabled. Variant is going to be outline, and size is going to be small, like that. Great. And now let's go ahead and let's add another button in here, which is just going to render the trash icon from Lucid React. So make sure you import the trash from Lucid icon, and I'm going to separate this to imports. All right, let's go ahead and let's give this a size of small and disabled of disabled. Actually, no, this one doesn't have that disabled. And let's give it a class name of h-4 and w-4, like that. And there we go. You can see how now we have chapter actions, so we can publish or we can delete. Great. So the first one I want to do is the delete one, right? So I want to show you how to delete your chapters, right? Because it's easier to do, and because we have to add another component called a dialog. So let's go inside of the terminal and let's add a new shadcn library. So npx shadcn -ui at latest add alert dialog, like this. Confirm the installation, and after this is installed, you can run your app again. All right, and now let's go inside of our components folder. Let's create a new folder called models, and inside create a new file confirm-model.tsx. Let's mark this as use client. And let's import everything we need from add/component/UI/alert dialog. So we're gonna have a alert dialog itself. We're gonna have a alert dialog action, alert dialog cancel, alert dialog content, alert dialog description, alert dialog footer, alert dialog header, alert dialog title, and alert dialog trigger, like that. Great. Now let's create an interface. So interface confirm model props is going to have children, which are react.react node, and it's going to have on confirm, which is going to be an action which just returns a void. Great. Now let's create our constant confirm model, like that. And let's go ahead and let's map this props to confirm model props. So let's extract children and on confirm. Great. And now what we're going to do is we're going to return the alert dialog, then alert dialog trigger, like this. And let's give it a prop as child. And inside we're going to render the children. Now outside of the alert dialog trigger, we're going to write alert dialog content, Let's give it an alert dialog header like that. Whoops. So let's end the tag alert dialog header. All right. Inside of that, alert dialog title, where we're going to write, "Are you sure?" like this. And then alert dialog description, where we're going to write, "This action cannot be undone," like that. Outside of header, we're going to add alert dialog footer like this, alert